Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Caroline Catan, and welcome to the Mental Health Screening and Referral Policy and Process webinar. We'll get started in a few minutes. I just wanted to welcome everybody here. We're still waiting for quite a few folks to sign on to the webinar. So thanks for your patience, and we'll get started in a few minutes. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me this afternoon for the Mental Health Screening and Referral Policy and Process webinar. I hope that this afternoon's presentation is helpful for everybody. A quick note: if you have any questions as we go through the presentation, please type them. You can type them into the chat feature at the bottom of your screen, and I will try to pardon me. I will try to pause a couple of times over the next hour so that and give folks an opportunity to ask questions over the phone in real time without having to type. So with that, let's get started. So today what we're going to cover is just some background on the policy, which is set forth in ACL 1511, which was issued back in 2015. We'll go through the process for documenting and completing a mental health screen for children and youth, as well as a referral, how the CFT process might be helpful, and then recording prevention plans. All of that is within the CWS CMS system. And then we'll try to do a quick review of all of the information and then have time for questions. So it really is going to be just kind of a fully packed hour of fun and exciting information. So California, just some background. California's focus on mental health, the mental health needs of children and youth in foster care has been historically a suit, and settlement really did focus on cross-system services and working between child welfare, juvenile probation, and the mental health system to try to make sure that care was for children and youth was coordinated. And then with implementation of the continuum of care reform, really trying to bring all of that together so that children and youth receive services in a coordinated fashion. And so we really are trying to make sure that care is coordinated across those systems. The point at which a child receives a mental health screen, and if a referral is made, that really does end up becoming the first point of that care coordination. And so it really is an important point in the process, and so it's important that we get it right. So on March 24th, 2015, the department issued ACL 15-11, and this ACL is, I did include it in the handouts. If you were, I'm hoping everybody was able to access them in the handout section. And so the ACL was issued in March 2015, and it spells out the policy and the requirement for providing mental health screens to children and youth with an open child welfare case at intake and at least annually thereafter. The ACL also addresses requirements related to developmental health screens, and the developmental health screens are related to a CAPTA requirement. We're not going to really talk about the developmental health screens, but I did want to make sure that I mentioned that the letter does address both the developmental health as well as mental health screens and what the requirement is. So in addition to completing a required screen at intake, there's also an expectation that anytime there's any indication of a possible change in the child or youth's well-being, that another screen is completed. So, for example, if a child or youth if there's a change in placement or a change in the child or youth school, if there's been a separation from siblings, other family members that the child or youth is close with, close friends, if there's any kind of noticeable differences in the child's demeanor or their attitude, drastic changes in their patterns of behavior, anything at all that causes any, so you're not limited to the requirement that is described in ACL 1511 really is the minimum standard and the minimum expectation. Anytime there's any reason to suspect that a child or youth well-being may be, if there's a concern, a mental health screen really should be completed. So the department does not require a specific tool to use for the mental health screen. Counties may choose to use one of the domains of the California's Integrated Practice CANS assessment tool as the mental health screening tool if they would like. And so we just, because the implementation of CANS is on the horizon and coming up for many counties this summer and this fall, I did want to mention that counties do have the option of using the items in the behavioral emotional needs domain of the CANS assessment tool and using that domain as the screening tool. If you use that as the screening tool, all of the items in that one domain, in the behavioral emotional needs domain, must be completed. Just that one domain. If any item in that domain, any of those items in that domain is rated as a 1 or above, that would be a reason to make a referral to mental health. That would be considered a positive screen for possible mental health needs, and a referral to mental health for an assessment, it would be required. And I want to say again, the department doesn't require that this be the tool that is used for the mental health screen. There are other tools out there. This is one option. So, if the results of the mental health screen are positive, indicating that there is a possible mental health need, then a referral must be made for a full clinical mental health assessment. Each county will have its own process for making a referral to mental health, but there are certain elements that are the same across the state, that in all cases there needs to be some consistency. So, for example, referral packets must include a copy of the completed screen and what its results were. So when a referral is made to mental health, a copy of that completed screen must be part of that referral package. The referral package should also include contact information for the individuals who are authorized to sign release of information and consent to treat forms. And so those are just, and many referral packages include this, and as well as other information. As I said, counties have their own will have their own processes, but these things always need to be there. And the other thing I want to mention is that a referral is essentially simply a formal request for clinical services, and it's important to think of it as such. Child welfare is requesting that a child or youth receive a full clinical assessment of their mental health needs. We're simply saying that, hey, we think that somebody who is a clinician should take a closer look at this child or youth to see if there is a mental health need, and if the child or youth meets medical necessity criteria, if there's a need for therapy, if there's a need for more for specialty mental health services, and so that's the referral is made. But it really is it's simply a request. So just quickly talking about reviewing what we just covered, the policy is that at intake and at least annually thereafter, all children and youth with an open child welfare case receive a mental health screen. Positive screens require a referral be made to mental health for an assessment. As I said previously, that referral is oftentimes the first point of care coordination, and so it really is critical that we get that right, that point and that first contact and that first coordinated care be an effective point. And so at this point, I do want to see if there were any questions or if anybody had any comments. Let's see. So somebody's asking if the PowerPoint will be available. If you're not able to access the handouts that are, you should see them. I'm hoping everybody can see the handouts that are below your, toward the bottom of your screen. But I did upload both the PowerPoint as well as the ACL. And if you cannot access them, I will, of course, make them available. I also should have mentioned at the beginning that this is being recorded, and we will make it available so that it can be viewed and listened to later. And we will share that information about how you can access, how the webinar can be accessed for later viewing. Okay, so moving on to documentation. So placing agencies are also expected to document all of this work that they've done. The screenings and the referrals that are completed need to be documented in the health notebook of CWS CMS. And so the next several slides we're going to review what that looks like and how that's done. So in client services, the first thing that happens is in the health notebook is to open up the screenings tab, which is that very last tab. And to complete the information on a completed screen, it's simply to walk you through it. It's pretty straightforward. You're going to enter the date of the screen, the type of the screen. The options include it's either an initial or an updated mental health screen for a child or youth, and it also includes options for if a child is younger than 5 or 5 and above, 5 and older. The other options that are available under the type of screen is there's an option for NA if the child or youth is already receiving mental health services, and NC if the child has already been referred for services. It is really crucial and important that if that's what's happened, that the screen still needs to be documented. So even if the child or youth does not, if there's no screen completed because the child was already receiving services, or if the child was already referred, there still needs to be documentation reflected in CWS CMS, so that we know that, so that you still get credit for having addressed the issue. And so that's what those NA and NC options mean. NC means not completed, NA means not applicable. So in the screen by field for child welfare and juvenile probation workers, those workers should select a staff person as the screen by. There is not an option available for child welfare social worker or juvenile probation officer. And then the results of a screen, you have two choices. The results of a screen are that it either resulted in a referral for services or it did not, and there was no referral needed. So if the results of the screen, if your screen indicates that there's a possible mental health need, then the referral has to be made. There's an expectation that a referral is made. and then any details that are relevant to what's happening can be entered into the comments field, and you've got up to 4,020 characters of information that you can provide there. So documentation of an initial mental health screen that had negative results would look something like this, like what you see on the screen. Documentation of look like this if there was a possible mental health need. So it would simply be documented right on top of the other. There's an initial one and then an updated one. The results of the updated screen are that there was a referral for services, as you can see, and there's comments included that say that the youth reports recent difficulty sleeping, got in a fight at school, and then mental health screen positive. But this just it gives you an idea about what it might look like over time. So when you're recording a referral, you're going to put in the date, the type of referral, and the options include are simply whether it's a mental health or a developmental health. The referred to field, typically a mental health referral is going to go to either the county mental health plan or to a service provider. Sometimes it can be something else, depends on the county and the circumstance, and so I don't want to say that it's never anything other than those two, but typically, most often, it will be the county mental health or to a service provider. There is a box to indicate if the referral was made to an out-of-county, to somebody outside of your county, and it's just a checkbox. This functionality doesn't reflect anything at all about the current presumptive transfer policies. It's simply a checkbox. And then there is a place for you to add comments. You can, with respect to the out of county, if there was additional information that was important, you can include it there. That's going to be up to you. You don't have nearly as many characters available here in the referral field as you did in the screening field. So I think that we have a few questions, and so I'm going to pause and see if I can answer some of them. Let's see. I understand there is no requirement to use a mental health screening tool. However, is the CANS a requirement to be used for other purposes as an outcome measure? Not. I think that may be a different question about outcome. I'm not sure what is meant by outcome measure, but with respect to the mental health screening, the CANS, use of the CANS tool for the mental health screening is all I was really trying to address at this time. So I'm not, I think that the question about whether or not the CANS would be used as an outcome measure, I think might be, maybe we can talk about that a little bit if we have a little bit more time toward the end. What is the definition of at intake? At intake, thank you, that's an excellent question. At intake is within the first 60 days from the date a child first enters into foster care. And when you say all children in an open case, does that include those who are in an open case receiving voluntary family services? It means I'm going to say open child welfare case means open child welfare case. So I'm going to say yes. There should be a mental health screen. I think that the requirement, the strict, the ACL simply describes the requirement as applying to children in foster care in an open child welfare case, and it doesn't get into the technical details of the definition of open child welfare case. I think best practice would say that children in a voluntary, receiving voluntary services could also benefit from a mental health screen, especially if there's if you see that there may be a need. But I can follow up with the group and send you a follow up with an email and confirm exactly how you should think about that particular aspect of it. What does N/C again means not completed, and it's with respect. We'll go back through that again before we finish out. But N/C is related to the screening, a mental health, whether or not you completed a mental health screen, and it's an option that's available in the drop-down menu for the type of screening. And if you would choose the N/C, meaning not completed, if a child had been was already referred to mental health, they were, but you don't. So maybe there's a referral still pending. So you didn't complete another screen because there's still a referral pending. Last question. I wanted to clarify, who has access to the CWS CMS program? I work for DMH. Oh, okay. So thank you for joining us, our mental health partners. We appreciate your interest in staying informed about the work that's happening here in child welfare. CWS CMS is the very large database and very complex automated system that child welfare and juvenile probation, to some extent, uses to document and track and record all of the information about the children and youth we have in our system on the child welfare side. And so the people who have access to it are our child welfare, your child welfare partners. There are, I think that in some counties there are agreements with mental health, and that where they may be able to not share access, but share information that may use and help each other with using information that comes from the CWS CMS and matching that with information that comes from some of the DMH, some of your mental health systems. But it's the way that child welfare tracks all of the information about children and youth involved with child welfare and juvenile probation. Okay. So having paused for questions, I think I'm going to try to start again with the referral section for documenting referral. So we've entered the date of a referral, as well as the referral type, which is mental health, and that we've referred to, we've made the referral to county mental health. There's a checkbox for whether or not the referral was made to out of county, and then we added details in the comments box. That's right. We did cover this, but we have many fewer characters available to us in the comments field for referrals than we did for screens. So, and the other thing I want to mention about referrals, you'll notice underneath where you see the yellow referral date, referral type, and referred to, there's an outcome of referral, and that line of information along where outcome of referral, outcome date, and consent, all of that information is not necessary in order to document a referral. So for our friends from Department of Mental Health and for others who may be new to CWS CMS, if you see a field that's highlighted in yellow, that means that it's required. You are not able to move on without entering in something in that field. The other fields that are white, you can move, do not require something to be completed there in order for you to move on. You'll be able to move on with your work without putting information there. So you can document a referral without having the outcome or the consent information available. So I just wanted to make that point. So, as you can see, this screenshot just shows you at the top. You'll see the screens that we documented, and then beneath that is the referral that we just went through without any of the outcome information documented. In the comments box, it simply says that there was, the signed release of information and consent to treat forms were, I think you can't see all of the comments that were written in there. I think I just included that it was the referral packet included the screen, the results, and signed release of information and consent to treat forms. So the type of consent, if the information is available if you have a consent information, you can document that information right here on the screen. And when you've got that on file. Now then, the outcome of the referral is a field that I do need to spend some time on because it's the source of some confusion. The outcome information, as I mentioned, is not necessary in order to document a referral. Please do not confuse the outcome of an assessment with the outcome of the referral that preceded it. I'm going to say that one more time. Do not confuse the outcome of an assessment with the outcome of the referral that preceded it. If you recall, I mentioned when we spoke about when I mentioned the referral, I said that it was a good idea to think of the referral as a request. The referral was a request for clinical services. It wasn't, and so we have to make sure that we remember that the referral was the request. It wasn't the assessment itself. So the outcome of the referral has two choices. It was either accepted or it wasn't. That simply means, did the agency that we made the referral to, did they receive it and did they act on it? Placing agencies, meaning the child welfare or juvenile probation agencies, should really confirm the status of a referral prior to documenting anything as being not accepted. A referral that is not accepted means that you made a referral and nothing happened with it, they ignored it, or maybe they sent it back to you. But it means that they did not act on that referral. Examples of a referral that might be documented as not accepted might include, perhaps if a child had run away and so was not available for services, couldn't be assessed, or if consent to treat could not be obtained for some reason. The reason that a referral would not be accepted, it would be the exception, not the rule. If a child or youth receives a clinical mental health assessment in response to a referral, the outcome of the referral is accepted, period. The outcome of the assessment does not change the fact that the referral was accepted. The child or youth receives any mental health service in response to a referral. the outcome of the referral is accepted. Results of a clinical mental health assessment, as well as any other mental health services that a child or youth receives, would be documented in a different part of the, in the next part of the system that we're going to, functionality that we're going to talk about. The outcome date should reflect when the referral was acted upon by the agency that received it. The only other thing I want to say is that the outcome date is really, that piece of information, it really is the only mechanism available to CDSS to track the time between when we make a referral and when services are provided. Without that information, we don't have any way to track that length of time. So if we're trying, so I know that there are oftentimes I've heard conversations around the time between we made a referral in November, but the child didn't receive any services or wasn't assessed until April, 5 months later, and perhaps the circumstances had changed and a lot had changed in the 5 months. Well, we don't have any way of tracking those kinds of dynamics if we don't have that information documented in the CWS CMS system. There's no place else in our system where that information might be captured. So I just wanted to make sure that folks understood that. So the next part of the functionality is an intervention plan. And this is where you would record or document an assessment. So if a referral was accepted, and so the mental health plan was going to complete a clinical assessment for a child or youth, on the child welfare side or the juvenile probation side, it needs to be documented as an intervention plan. So an intervention plan is needed before we can add any services to it. So you just simply, again, if you look for that, the yellow field, we need to just enter the date. And the plan type is going to be an initial mental health or an updated mental health plan. It's that simple. And then you're going to add any details to the comments field. So you might want to say that the intervention plan was the result of a referral following a positive mental health screen. You can almost think about the intervention plan sort of as a container for the individual services that need to be added. So you'll see that there's an intervention plan, and then beneath that, there's plan detail. And that's how the individual services that would be added are going to be included and documented. So now the first date of the service, and then there's a drop-down menu that is called recommended intervention choices, and among those choices is assessment. And then you can add important details to the comments field. So this right here, I took the liberty of creating an intervention plan that included a clinical assessment as well as intensive care coordination, so that you could see what it might look like as one intervention plan that included an assessment and ICC for one youth. So the intervention plan is an initial mental health plan. I've got some comments in here explaining that the plan was a result of a referral following a positive screen. A little over a week later, the ICC services we're started, that the CFT facilitator and the ICC coordinator are working together with the family to plan the next CFT meeting. And then down underneath the plan detail is where I've got the individual services. Each service is documented here. So it's a bit of an inelegant way of documenting the mental health services, but it is the way that child welfare has available to keep track of as much of this information as we can. I would also want to make sure that it's clear that we need to make sure that we're working very closely with our partners on the mental health side, because none of this information is going to simply appear. It's going to be the result of partnerships with our mental health folks. And so it's important that we have that we are in communication with the folks at mental health in order to make sure that we have information that we can available so that we are able to document it. Because if we're not communicating with our partners at mental health, we won't have much to document here. We won't be able to include any useful or information that really does help us stay informed about the mental health and well-being of the children and youth in our care. So it's really a critical piece to make sure that we're mindful of. So from the and then lastly, I just want to say this is what the whole process looks like. I know this is pretty much impossible to read, but this just shows you this first, looking at it from left to right, the first box is the screening field, the middle box is the referral field, and the third box is that plan intervention field. But this just shows you that from the screening all the way through to the intervention, to an assessment and services, this is what it would look like. To document all of those steps through the process. CWS CMS does provide the ability to document the process all the way through. And it's important, we rely on all of you to help us stay informed and to make sure that we have accurate information about the work that you're doing. And so the more we can help you understand how to do that, and that it's important to do that, the better understanding we'll have about the services and the needs of the children and youth in our care. So I understand from my trustee partner here that we have many questions. So I will try to pause and answer as many of them as I can, and I will try to, see if I can't take folks off mute so we can get to, let me try to answer some of them. How many do we have here? Okay, I'm going to try to answer some of them over the phone, and then I'll take folks off mute so that we can have a bit more of a conversation. Let's see. All right, so where are we? Can you please address the Kansas? Oh, which one? Were you highlighting? Oh, yeah. Would you continue screenings once a case is FM? Yes, the requirement to complete a screen there's no change in that requirement until that case is completely closed. So the requirement and the expectation to complete screens regularly does not change until that expectation is in place until that case is closed and that child is no longer part of is no longer under our supervision or under our care. Who should input this data into CWS CMS? Should it be the provider or the child welfare worker or admin staff? That I cannot answer that question. I could say what I think, but it's not going to apply universally across the state. Each county will have its own approach to how this information is managed and how it is and how the information is moved from the case and gets entered into the system. And so I think that it really does. I appreciate the question, because I do think it's important to be thoughtful about that, and because it's important that the information be entered accurately, but it's also important that the information be entered timely. We have, especially with the implementation of CCR, as well as other, and implementation of the CANs and a host of other efforts, there's a lot of attention being paid to how the department and how California is progressing and how we are meeting the mental health needs of children and youth in care, and how things are moving over time. For example, where we were back in the mid to late 90s through today. And so some of the there are concerns that our data does not reflect the practice that's actually taking place. For example, use of the NA and NC fields in the screening functions. If a child is already receiving services, are workers going in and documenting that a screen was not needed or not applicable because a child or youth is already receiving services? When that doesn't happen, when that doesn't take place, when those fields are left blank, when a child because a child is receiving services already, the way the data looks in the data, it's reflected as though we've simply not addressed that child's mental health needs, is what it looks like in the data. And so we're trying to make sure that we are getting credit for the good work we're doing, and that the data reflects what's happening out there. What are we really seeing? What are the needs? Where do we need to focus our efforts? And so we're trying to make sure that we have a clear understanding about what really is, where is the need actually at? Because if we think that there's a lot of unmet needs, but really it's about data entry, that's a different need. And so we want to make sure that we are looking at the right things. Is the state planning on running a report on MS screenings and referrals? If so, when? Will the county be given advance notice so we can ensure data is entered? We have been looking at mental health screens and referrals. That's part of what there's been a lot of attention paid to this. There's other efforts as well. I don't have a timeline for when a report will be run, or if there is a plan to run something on a regular basis. I don't, I don't know, but I do think that counties will receive, will be aware and will be informed about what that would, when that happens and when that would be, what kind of intervals that might occur. There, I do know that there is I believe there's a survey that's going to be distributed to counties on the child welfare side soon, with respect that's related to this, to these issues, about the data entry and about the mental health screens and referrals, in terms of helping us to understand where counties are in terms of their process and in terms of what their needs are, so that we know that we're looking in the right places and that we're focused on the right things, so that we can help support getting us from here to there, making sure that we're making progress in the right ways. And so a similar effort is happening on the mental health side with our DHCS partners. We are coordinating with them. We share data between the CWS CMS system, and we match that with the Short Doyle system and data from there, so that we can try to understand children and youth who are in foster care who are also receiving specialty mental health services. Children and youth who were referred or who referred for a mental health assessment and then received specialty mental health services. We are looking at that kind of data so that we can make sure that we're understanding what are the needs, are we meeting them, and where should we focus in order to make sure that we're doing what we need to do and that things are moving forward the way they should be. So there's a lot of moving parts and pieces, and we're doing our best to make sure that we're covering all of the important and right parts. Okay, one last question, and before I open up the phone. Mental health and developmental screenings on probation youth in foster care and documenting them in CWS also applies, correct? Correct. I would like to thank you very much for asking me a straightforward yes or no question. I really appreciate that. But yes, probation is also, we do ask probation to please, these same requirements apply to them because our probation youth are also in a foster care placement, and so the requirement does in fact apply to our probation youth as well. If they're in an out of home foster care placement, actually, yeah, all of us, yeah, our probation youth. So yes, the answer is yes. All right, and with that, I'm going to see if I am able to, how technically savvy I am to try to unmute everybody. Let's see if I can do this. I may have to do it individually. All right, so I think that I've got, wow, it says I'm trying to, am I going to have to do this individually? Okay, so I think, let's see if I can do this. All right, so for people that all right, I'm sorry, hang on give me 1 second. I'm going to try to figure this out in half a heartbeat. All right, so can folks, let's see, can folks,
Shouldn't be red.
I know, but it says, can folks, let's see, so somebody say something. Oh, I still can't hear you. Nope, I don't know, I don't understand why that's not working. Well, apparently I'm not as technical.
Muting. Enter star 88.
Star 88?
I mean pound 88 pound.
Pound 88 pound?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to give this a try. Here we go. Hello? Somebody say something. Nope, they can't hear me. I mean, I can't hear them. Well, I apologize, everybody. We tried to unmute you, but I didn't have any luck. Apparently, I'm not as technically savvy as I've been, pretending to be for a while now. So I will continue to try to answer your questions in a second silence. It's by just reading them off the screen. So let's see, is the same one, okay, so we answered that one. Let's see, find another one here. Where else? Where are we next? You can hear me talking, I appreciate that. Regarding the survey, we are finalizing the, okay.
It's right.
Is that? Oh, okay. Are there concerns with HIPAA because the plan details print in the F? I don't, no, we are not concerned about HIPAA because, any more so than we would be about the rest of CWS CMS. And so, I would simply, expect that whatever practices and whatever, privacy concerns and, privacy practices that are in place to, ensure the protection of sensitive information, of personal health information that is that are already in place in your organizations and in the way that you work would also apply here. I don't think that we do not have full mental health records, obviously, in the CWS CMS system, and so there's I don't believe that there's there's not the record documenting the receipt, of one service is, I think, consistent with the degree of, with the kind of information that we have documented in CWS CMS and the health notebook specifically, otherwise. For referral outcome date, does acted upon mean the date the assessment was completed or the service provided? I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say the following. However, what your local jurisdiction interprets it to mean, I would ask that you use it consistently. This the functionality that in CWS CMS is this specific functionality is somewhat I don't have a lot of, there's not a lot of detail, as you can see. What the information you see when you get into the functionality is the information that's there. I don't have any more insights into what any of these fields are intended to mean than anybody else. And so it was created many years ago, and so I would just simply say that if you're interpreting that outcome date would be the date that the agency that received the referral acted on it. If that's the date that an assessment was completed, if that's the way that your agency is going to use it, I would simply say, to make sure that your agency is interpreting it that way and using it that way consistently and applying it that way consistently. And so it's not, as an admitted bureaucrat, I would say it's not a bad idea to write that down, to have some kind of some sort of instruction sheet, guidebook, something, so that that it's being used consistently across by everybody that's using this system as much as possible, because it's when when that date is interpreted differently that we start to have problems with the data because it starts looking different. We answered that. Oh, okay. Let's see, what else can we do? Are you saying we mark the outcome as accepted only when the clinic or therapist accepts the child to render services? We do not mark yes when the DMH assesses the child and deems his or her as subclass. This is, okay, so when you're asking me, if somebody is asking a question regarding subclass, telling me that saying that when we do not mark yes when the DMH assesses a child and deems him or her as subclass is a reference to KDA subclass criteria. I don't, if you're not aware of this, at least at the state level, there may be different for individual counties locally with special project codes or whatnot, but there is nothing at the state level that identifies KDA subclass members, class members, or any of that. There's ICC services and IHBS services are in CWS CMS, but there is no language anywhere in CWS CMS that identifies a child as a member of the subclass or as a class member, and there never has been. So it's important that you, and for all intents and purposes at the state level, there is no more such thing as a subclass member. So we recognize that it's important that you are, that counties are still, and that children or youth are still, there still be a process to ensure that the needs of the child are being met according to specific criteria. However, I cannot tell you, there's no, it's like the CWS CMS does not reflect KDA, lawsuit criteria. It doesn't reflect a subclass member, and there's nowhere for you to indicate in CWS CMS that a child is or is not, or was not a member of the subclass. So I'm not sure if that, I don't know that that's helpful to your question, and I apologize for that, but it's important to try to make sure that you're just simply documenting the information with according to what's there. Was the screen positive or not? Was a referral made? If a referral was made, was it acted on? Not what was the action? Was it acted on? And when you're saying when somebody says, if a referral was not acted on, or was if a county mental health plan said no to a referral, I don't understand what that means. Does that mean that they're not actually going to assess a child when you've requested services? You've requested a clinical assessment and a mental health, and when you make that request, somebody says no. So it may be that we need to I need to understand the question a little bit better. In order to be able to answer your question fully. So I apologize for that. Let's see. We answered that question. Let's see. Is there a plan for CWS Cares to get this information directly from the DBH system so that it does not have to be manually input? I am not aware of CWS Cares, a plan for CWS Cares to be able to communicate with the systems that are used on the DHCS side, so that the systems that Department of Healthcare Services manages for the mental health plans. However, in terms of a mental health screen and a referral is what child welfare does. That's not something that the mental health plans do. Those are actions, those are activities that are required, that child welfare and juvenile probation are required to complete, and those are actions that the child welfare and juvenile probation are required to document. And so for those activities, the mental health systems wouldn't really wouldn't be documenting or have that information available to them. We need to be able to keep a record of what we've done on the child welfare and probation side of the coin. And so in that sense, it's important that we document that. I'm part of I do participate in CWS Care's planning so that and provide input and so that we can try to make sure that the functionality is designed in a more effective and in a more effective way that is that makes sense to the way that that folks in the field, that you folks are working, so that it's not quite so cumbersome and labor intensive, and so that it's to make improvements there. But I'm not able to speak to how it may link with systems for that mental health folks use. In our county, CWS makes referrals to our triage clinician, who then refers to an appropriate level of service in the community. If a client is referred to triage and linked with a provider, but isn't linked, what is the status of the referral in the CWS system? Or let's see. So if a client is referred to triage and linked with a provider, but isn't, so I'm wondering if what is meant by that is, I would just simply say that if you've, and that's what I mean when I say if there's a screen and a screen is positive, so that the referral is made, and if a referral is made, whether the referral is made to a county mental health agency or to a service provider, if that service provider is not, if that referral is just pending and nothing has happened, nothing's happened yet, and there's still sort of this, you're just sort of in this limbo sort of undefined sort of period of time, and that you're not sure because nothing's happened. The status of the referral is simply that there's a referral pending. If you recall, when back at the screen, one of the options in the type of screen included NA if a child was already receiving services, or NC, meaning not completed because there was already a referral made. So if there was another screen that was due, you would document a screen as being NC because there was a referral, because there's already a referral pending. In order to resolve the issue of a referral that is simply left unresolved, incomplete, with an unknown outcome because nothing has happened, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your partners over at mental health, to the service provider and others, and if that's unsuccessful, is to enlist the help of your leadership to try to resolve that issue. I think that's where the communication is really critical. That's why it's so important that we make sure that our partnerships with our mental health with mental health are strong, and that we have effective, and that we're able to communicate effectively with them, so that we are so that doesn't happen, so that we don't just make a referral and then we don't have any idea what happens after that. Are they receiving services or not? We don't, and if the answer is we don't have any idea, that's an issue. That's a problem, because as the child welfare agency, or juvenile probation agency, we are responsible. Just because we don't have any control over the mental health resources in our county doesn't mean we're not responsible to make sure that the mental health needs of that child are met. And so we need to, and in order to navigate that, we need to make sure that we have that we're able to communicate with the folks that have the authority and that are responsible for those mental health resources, and they are the ones that can help us to make sure that we're that those needs are being met, and that we need to, and what do we need to know, what do we need to do, how can we work together to make sure that those needs are being met, and that the child and youth are that those needs are that we're doing what we can to make sure that we're not neglecting, something that that we shouldn't be. All right, so we are out of time, I'm afraid, but I will say this. We've got your questions, and I really do appreciate everybody's time and energy and their interest in this topic. We are over time. I've got the questions, and so I will do my best to, we'll save them, and I will do my best to compile them and provide written answers, and I can share those back out with this group if you've registered for the webinar. And I can, I will do my best to provide the questions with answers. I'm not going to give you an estimated time because I don't know how long that might be. You can also follow up and send additional questions if you have them that if I didn't answer your question, or you didn't think my answer was complete, or you didn't wasn't quite right, please follow up at the email address CWS coordination, all one word, at dss.ca.gov, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I will also share with the group that as soon as this recording of this webinar is available online, I believe we have the department has a YouTube channel that we will be able to make it available on. I will send that link and the information about how to access that to everybody that was registered, and we'll make sure that counties have information about how they can find and access this the recording of this webinar. So thank you again for your time and your patience and your participation. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.